r/askreddit. Serious, have you ever known someone who wholeheartedly believed that they were wolfkin, a vampire, and elf had special powers, and couldn't handle the reality that they weren't when confronted? What happened to them? My best friend in high school and my first 2 years of college genuinely believed that she could not only speak to forestry, but that she was a wingless fairy. She would oftentimes, when we went walking her dogs, lean to trees and translate for me what the rustling of nature spoke of. She also would scribble in her books what she called new alchemy, violently scribbled circles and void shapes she believed held magical and fey magic through her own powers. We had a falling out after a few years, after she moved to the other side of the country to be with her grandmother. We started talking about a few months ago and I found out she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She is currently on 2 types of medication and she told me her walks are depressingly quiet now. That made me sad. I hope she finds a balance between the 2 worlds. And that's the saddest I'm gonna be today. Thanks Reddit. Not exactly the same as wolfkin, but very much in the vein of the question in terms of total reality denial. I know someone who totally, wholeheartedly, believes that they are a Jedi Master. Our families go way back, so I happen to know other kids were merciless to him all through childhood. He's always had problems, though. Kind of one of those people you can feel aren't quite right but not exactly why. He decided he was a Jedi Master one day. Just, like, out of the blue. Credit where credit is due, he went all the way with it. Became a minor nerd celebrity for a while. At first when people challenged the Jedi thing, why don't you have powers then? He'd say Jedi is a mindset, not a power. Or sometimes you don't know the powers I may have, and try to play it off like a joke. But the dude was 100% serious. If you pushed, he would outright melt down with tears and screaming. Apparently his parents financially supported him pretty much entirely, until he, and this part confuses the crap out of me, got married and had a kid while still insisting on the Jedi thing. After that the wife supported him. Eventually he got tired of that and left his family to take off with a teenager he met at a convention. That's when we cut ties with him. You can be a Jedi all you want, but cutting and leaving your kid is some Sith Lord shit. How TF am I single and these people getting married and having kids? Maybe there are some powers there. My cousin. She 100% believed she was a werewolf. She was finally diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar years ago. She's doing a lot better now. There's a theory that some reports of werewolves and monsters are because people were unable to comprehend the illness they had. They would have a sense of self and an awareness that something was wrong, but being unable to diagnose themselves would concoct a monster as being ill. It would make sense finally why they were changing, so glad she's better. Went to school with a girl who acted like a dog. Barked, panted, pawed at people. In class she would reply normally but then bark at the end. This went on for 3 years. Decided to look her up on FB and she has a good job and seems normal. Teenagers are fucking weird. Was it an actual bark sound or was she like Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd president? Oh, and woof. Yes, unfortunately. He claimed to have an invisible tail and had a dream in which a great mother wolf revealed to him that he had the soul of a wolf. So he did what any sane person would do and started buying furs to masturbate onto. He showed me eBay links via Facebook and explained that it's one of the only 2 ways that he can get off, as well as started fucking dogs, or so he claimed. Last I heard, he's in Alaska working with sled dogs all the while he's engaged to a woman who he refuses to have sex with because human sex is disgusting to him. I need a drink just fucking writing that. Somebody might want to check on those dogs. I once dated a girl who would wear a bell around her neck and act like a cat. Over time her self-esteem improved and she just sort of grew out of it without me saying anything or pressuring her. One day the bell was just a ribbon, and then she stopped wearing the ribbon. At least in the case of high schoolers who act like this, I would say in 90% of people it really is just a phase in a growing kid's search for identity and community. These days when the internet is always there for you, there are infinite communities for people of all sorts. When you're an angsty teen who doesn't know who they are yet, it's easy to latch on to an accepting community and identify with them because they accept you, even if that's not really who you are. I mean, that's how I got sucked into the friend group I had in high school, and it's why I wasted so much time on Gaia Online back in the day. Unfortunately, yes. I met a girl at a very young age while going to church. Her family was deeply religious, but in a messed up way. So we dated off and on, and after high school hit it off pretty strong. She honestly believed she was a fairy. She would get faced with the reality of not being a fairy and completely shut down, sometimes even attempting suicide. Found out later she has really bad schizophrenia and had to get away from her after she discovered drugs, and I couldn't help her anymore. I met a guy who was supposedly pretty close to the level in Scientology where you're supposed to develop powers like telepathy and stuff. Not sure what became of him. You'd think that once people reached this level and didn't have powers they'd quit, but brainwashing. Yeah. They had really severe childhood abuse trauma to contend with, and coped with it by believing they were psychic. We met in like junior high when they still believed this. Eventually, they realized that they weren't entirely wrong, just a little bit misdirected. They're a deeply empathic person who, thanks to their abuse history, is very good at reading facial expressions, body language, etc. They're actually a really wonderful person, and ended up becoming a social worker and volunteer at a domestic violence shelter, where all of the qualities that made them a good psychic make them great at helping others who are going through a difficult time. Know a guy that was a wolfkin back in high school. Imagine this goth dude that straps a tail to his belt and occasionally wears these dumb hairbands with ears. It's obvious that most kids were bullying him, because every time someone would try to defend or befriend him, he'd literally ignore you, and when you asked him why he doesn't want any friends, he'd tell you that he's a lone wolf and also a story how his pack left him, which was honestly kinda hilarious. In the last year, however, he started going to school looking actually normal. He still didn't talk to anyone, didn't even see him talking to the teachers this time, only knew he was going to the school therapist pretty much on daily basis. Haven't seen him since we graduated until like a year ago, when I saw someone that looked remotely like him hanging out near my campus, and since I always like to catch up with some of my classmates from high school, I thought I could ask him how his life is going. He's a completely different person now, a bubbly outgoing guy that will spill literally anything about himself without you even asking. It's honestly great, but also kinda scary. Later he told me that it was his dad that made him change, apparently threw everything he liked out, because he was done with him being a wolfkin. He doesn't seem to mind anymore, though. If anything, when we meet, we often joke about our high school horrors, my obnoxious makeup and his weird fursona that straps a tail to his belt. Of the ways to attach a tail, that's probably one of the better options. Buckle the fuck up, everyone. Because I was that kid in middle school. I wholeheartedly believed I was a forest elf. I don't even really remember how it started, but I always loved fantasy novels growing up, especially ones about mythical creatures and nymphs and fairies, all that shit. In middle school, I wore a lot of earthy colors, always had flowers in my hair, joined the archery club, which I was not good at, mind you. I wore elf ears to school, and I mostly walked around barefoot, not a school, obviously. I thought I would communicate with forest animals and navigate myself using only the trees and any water source. Needless to say, I was definitely picked on a lot. I'm 26 now and an IT consultant, married to a damn great guy, and have a baby girl on the way. I never picked up archery again, I promise. Edit. I'm dying at some of these comments. Thank you guys for your humor. And for the silver. Definitely thinking about actually trying archery seriously, but with a baby on the way, doesn't seem super possible right now. Maybe I'll raise a family of elves and I'll make a hobby of it with my husband when my daughter's old enough. My former friend Mark, who ran around at night naked thinking he was a werewolf. He stopped when he was shot in the ass by a paranoid farmer. Small town thought Mark had too much time and energy, and so they had him join the football team. I don't think he runs around naked anymore, but he works as a vet and helps raise wolves. Whoa, I'm surprised I can actually answer this one. In high school I became friends with a girl I met through theater. This was during the Undertale craze. She got me into the game and eventually confided in me that she was kin with Soren, the skeleton from the game. I decided to go ahead and go with it because I really liked her and I didn't really have many close friends at the time. I asked her what made her believe she was Son, and she explained that since there's an infinite number of universes with infinite different timelines, there's probably a timeline somewhere in which she really is Son. I think she also identified a lot with his whole "I'm funny and outgoing on the outside but I'm actually really depressed" thing. In all honesty, she had a lot of mental health issues and it was a form of escapism for her. She kept it to herself and never talked about it at school, but I would listen to her when she needed it and I would call her Son after school because it made her happy. I felt bad because she really needed someone to understand her, and it felt like one small thing I could do to make her feel better. She's doing much better now. We kind of fell out of contact, but she's got a good job and I think she's moved on from the Kim thing. It's what got her through high school in one piece, so I don't regret indulging her at all. I know it's easy to make fun of teenagers on Tumblr who say they're an angel or a god or a character from a video game, but please don't antagonize them. 99 times out of 100 it comes from a lack of attention, self-esteem or mental health issues, or just a really strong desire to fit in with a community. Someone I used to be friends with identified as a lynx. I was weirded out but she was my friend so I dealt with it. Soon she started to say I was sitting on her tail and she was fully convinced she turned into a cat at night. Last I heard of her she was drawing furry porn for $100 a piece. Edit. A lot of people are talking about how short lynx tails are. I know, this person was just really delusional. I was sitting a whole desk away from her when she made the accusation. A couple other things she did was claim she was sorry cause she accidentally clawed me with her claws. She had only put her hand on my shoulder. She also complained that the teacher was hurting her ears because she was talking and that affected her cat hearing. Another time she tried to go a week without glasses to prove her eyes were becoming more like a cat's. She didn't last an hour. Final thing, she attempted to start a furry Therian club. Her campaign was along the lines of "join our cult to unleash your inner animal." Yes, she used the word cult. Knew a guy that swore that he was a reincarnated kitsune spirit. He and I got into an argument one day and he swore that he would destroy my life because kitsunes never let go of grudges. Mythologically, kitsunes were described as being especially capricious. He ended up telling a bunch of lies about me to everyone he could, gaslit another friend into cutting off contact with me, and occasionally I'll run into someone online that fell for one of the many stories he made up about me. Edit. Seems capricious is a word that fewer people know than I thought. In this case, another word might be carefree. I was trying to say that he had gotten the personality trait completely wrong. Sounds like he did what he said he'd do. Which doesn't make him a fox spirit, it makes him a creepy, vindictive asshole. I actually went to high school with a lot of people like this who eventually grew out of it. I remember one girl specifically because, based on her Facebook, she has not grown out of it. She claimed she had multiple personalities, her main two being herself and the other being a 200-year-old British vampire. We live in the US and she would put on a British accent and everything. It seems she has found a partner just like her though and they're planning a pretty extravagant vampire wedding. Good on them. Edit. A lot of people speaking on her possibly having a personality disorder and I don't know her mental health history so I truly have no clue. To me it just seemed like she really liked vampires and liked living in a world where she believed in them. She was able to turn the personality on whenever she wanted. But I shouldn't speak on anyone's mental health and either way, I hope she's doing well. This isn't exactly what you're asking for, but it's similar. From 1st to 6th grade, I had this friend Ally that genuinely believed she could see dead people and demons and whatnot. She would do the stereotypical vampire things, pretending to bite people, showing off her canines, talking about blood, etc. But that wasn't like her main thing. She had this one demon that she said followed her everywhere and hid in the bathrooms that we just called it. Ally always described it as being whiter than paper with 2 slits for a nose and sharp fangs. I wholeheartedly believed her because why wouldn't I? I was a dumb kid that wanted supernatural things to be real, and she was my best friend that had no reason to lie to me. I literally was too scared to use the restroom at school because she said that it always peeked over the stall. As the years went on, though, I eventually realized that she was making it up. But the conviction with which she said that kind of stuff was scary. I know her parents were going through a rough patch at the time, so I think she was just making it up for attention, which she got. I haven't talked to her in a while, but another friend of mine ran into her at a fair recently and said she seemed to be doing well. I'm glad things are better for her. One of my closest friends that I lived with through most of college thought she had special powers. It was weird, to say the least. She'd been bullied all her life and I always reckoned she developed this as a coping mechanism. The thing that really stood out to me though was that she was so good at getting people to play along with it, and I have no idea how. I saw this scenario play out a few times during the time we lived together, and I was always so confused as to how she kept getting people on board, so to speak. General scenario went like this. She'd meet someone, and if she really liked them, then after a while she'd tell me in a very knowing sort of way that she thought they had the gift. Aka they also had powers. She told me once she thought I had them, and I just kind of smiled and nodded and said, okie dokie then. So then she'd get together for lunch or something with this person and she'd launch into this full-on spiel about how she was all that was standing between the world and destruction, and she could tell that they were also special and she needed someone to help her fight these battles. Not literal battles, more like astral projection type battles, and help her guard the gates. Hilarious side note, the gates were colored cyan, magenta, yellow and black. She got mad at me one time when I referred to them as the printer gates. And you'd think that after unloading all that people would run screaming, but they didn't. They'd show up at our apartment to talk to her and they'd be talking about these battles and stuff. All I can figure is she was good at spotting people with overactive imaginations who didn't fit in well. She probably would have made a great cult leader tbh. She now works in IT and we still talk to each other pretty regularly. She wrote a fantasy novel that she's trying to get published, which was actually quite good when she let me read the draft. I'm guessing that became the outlet for her stories when she grew up, so to speak. I kind of want to ask her about what was going on with her, but I kind of don't want to open that can of worms ever again. When she wasn't in full-on WTF mode, she was the most kind and genuinely fun to be around person. I'm sort of afraid the printer gates will rear their ugly head again if I bring it up. Edit. For everyone that keeps assuming people were going along with it because she was hot, I'm just going to leave it at this. The bullying she'd been dealing with was because of her physical appearance and weight. I think the appeal is more along the lines of what one person said in a reply, in an unfortunate parallel to Charles Manson. She was good at spotting cast-off people and then you're just excited to belong to something, so you go along with it. Years before we had goths and new age enlightenment, I used to manage an occult bookstore and I met wannabe vampires, werewolves, fae, and others. Sometimes it was like being in charge of a Dark Shadows convention. I used to date one of the store's patrons, a 6-foot Amazon from Texas who claimed she was a vampire. She wasn't too crazy, but towards the end of the relationship she was getting too bitty. When I was in the US Navy, we had this dude who thought he was a wolf in a human body. He would howl at the moon and just be generally strange. I knew someone that had served with him before me at a different command who said he had to be forced by medical to shower. When asked why he wasn't showing, he told them it would wash away his scent and he wouldn't be able to attract a mate. I don't know what happened to him. Edit. This was aboard the Theodore Roosevelt in 2007. I know he was also on a carrier in Florida. I'm pretty confident he was a conventional MM.